All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs. Welcome to Sharing More Than the Sheets, a podcast to help you and your partner make better financial and lifestyle decisions so that you can both focus on the things that you love. I'm your host, Michael Khouri, financial planner, green thumb, husband, and just dad. This segment is called Michael's Magic Moment. It's my opportunity to play a little snippet from one of our previous episodes, which resonated with our listeners, that I received feedback from, or I felt really had an impact on some people's lives. Hope you enjoy. Today we go back to episode number 91, where we talk about managing conflict in a relationship when it comes to money. Now, ironically, this is episode 191, and it was when I invited Lea Clothier to come onto the show and to talk about this. And I love this discussion. To this day, I still talk to clients about some of these things and some of these points that me and Lea discussed, and it really highlights the importance, first of all, of couples realizing that each person has their own relationship with money. It also highlights the fact that there's no right or wrong. We all just have a different relationship with money, and that it's important to acknowledge that and to work together as a couple. And it even more highlights the importance of communication and having a plan and having something that two people are following, because we all have different habits. We all have different relationships with money. As I said, some people are spenders, some people are savers. And if you, without a budget or without a proper plan that you're working together on, it's impossible for a couple to be on the same page. It's impossible for them to minimize conflict. It's impossible for them to really do well financially. They might do okay, but they're not going to do really, really well unless they have a common plan or something that they're working on together. So I hope you enjoy this part of this episode. I recommend that you go back and listen to the whole episode and pass this on to a couple, pass this on to someone that you know probably needs to listen to it, which is, I can tell you now, nearly every single couple out there. So enjoy. I hope you get something out of it, and I hope that you'll think of this episode next time you and your partner are having a discussion about money. It's such a deep topic, isn't it? It's something you could talk about for hours, but it's never ever clear or straightforward from what I understand.
No, it's not, but it's so prevalent. If we look at the number one cause of relationship breakdown, it's generally around money stress. And understandably, because we don't often talk about money, or we don't feel safe to communicate how we're feeling about it, either with our partner or with other people, it can just blow out of control, and we don't actually see how much it can be damaging our relationship unnecessarily.
And also I find that when it comes to money, it's even a touchy subject between people. And I've mentioned this before, but everyone has a different relationship with money. But it's some people just hate talking about it in general. Like they just literally, just the thought of talking about money just creates this anxiety.
Absolutely. And that's because money it's not just logical, it's highly emotional. And because we give money so much power in our lives, i.e. we ask it to create success or happiness for us, or we hand over our happiness to how much money we have, for example, it gets very complicated. So when we actually talk about money, we're talking about our self-worth, and we're talking about how we're feeling about how successful we are or how happy we are. So it triggers us emotionally, and that's why a lot of us just don't want to even open that box and go there, because it's quite a scary place for a lot of people.
And I mean, just to jump straight into it, if there's a couple that's listening to this, or and they've tried to manage money before, they've had a financial planner, they've done 50 budgets. Mm-hmm. They've tried everything they possibly can, and it's still not working. Where should they start, in your opinion? What tips would you give that couple? Should they go back to the drawing board? What questions should they be asking themselves? And how do you think they should approach it?
Yeah, great question. And as you said, it's a big one, because essentially we all have a very complicated relationship with money. And when you're in a relationship, it's not only your complicated relationship that you've got to deal with, but it's also your partner's. And it takes a willingness on both parts to look at it openly and honestly and with some level of awareness to say what is and isn't working in our relationship with money. And quite often you'll find that opposites attract. So it's even in our money relationships, we might get a spender and also a saver. And that's why there's some conflict. Or we might get someone who is very frugal and more values driven with their money, someone who's more free and liberal with their money. So when we have conflicting values around money, that's often where the conflict stems from. It's the beginning place or the birthplace of the conflict. And that's why we often see people feeling a little bit emotional about money because they're feeling like their values are being triggered by their partner.
And the trap that I feel like some couples will fall into, and it's probably not a trap, it's probably a characteristic of being in a relationship and talking about problems, but that I feel like the blame game starts, and it's very easy for someone to feel like they're being attacked sometimes if, one person says, you do this, you do that. And I feel like any sentence that starts with the word you doesn't normally end with an ideal outcome.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And that's where tools like nonviolent communication can be really handy. And for those who don't know what it is, I would really highly suggest having a look at it separately out of this discussion. There's some great tools and discussion frameworks that you can use in conversations that do create a bit of emotion or tension or a little bit of heat in the conversation, because it's a framework that teaches us to start with how am I feeling? So rather than putting that blame and pointing it to the other person and saying, when you do this, it's about, I feel this when this happens, because it's less confrontational when it's about us and we're not blaming straight away.
Yeah. And also when it comes to even, I feel like again, just like any relationship issue, there's always, it's always a team effort in that if there is an issue, it's normally not just one person as well. Not normally, I find that, yes, one person might have a spending issue like what you said, but even the saver that doesn't like spending, I feel like that person sometimes could probably saving too much and not wanting to put money into a bills account and not wanting to change how they do things. That can always cause an issue. And I don't know if you've come across this, but a lot of people are normally, I find they're set in their own way and they don't want to change things. They still want to use the credit card for everything, or they don't want to set up more than one bank account.
And you're right in that sense, because what's missing there is any aspect of compromise. And in relationship, compromise is necessary. It's not about going without or doing things absolutely against your value set, but it is about being flexible to be accountable to your partner and accounting to their values as well as your own. So if we come back to the root of what causes conflict in the first place, when our values aren't being met, it causes conflict. So let's say I have a value, and there's typically 3 values with money. I mean, we have all 3 of them, but there's typically 3. And we will generally have one that's higher priority than the other 2. So the very first one is security. Money equals security. The second one is money equals freedom. And the last one is money equals power / status / success. You can kind of interchange any of those 3 words. So those 3 words typically represent our values with money. So where conflict may occur is if you've got someone who highly values freedom with money equals freedom, and partnered with someone who highly values security, for example. So if let's say I'm the one that has the freedom value and my partner has the security value, if I'm out there freely spending money in accordance with my values, feeling good about it, doing it the way that I want to do it, I'm actually going to be compromising my partner's need for security. It's not intentional because I'm doing what I'm doing in accordance with my values, but just by doing that, my partner is going to be feeling out of alignment with their values and insecure because the freedom is compromising their security. And vice versa, when they're kind of looking after money and hanging on to it tightly and being very secure with it, it compromises my value and my need for freedom. So first of all, just even acknowledging that we have different values with money is a really important step.
That's such a good point, because when a couple acknowledge, because I love the way you've put that. So it's because when a couple do acknowledge these things, they then know why the other person is doing something in a certain way. They'll know why, as I said, the saver is literally saving everything they can and don't want to even spend $100 on a new pair of shoes. Whereas the other one will have $1,000 in their bank account. I was going to say he or she for a second, but I don't want to get into genders here. But $1,000 in their bank account, and they want to spend, twice that much on an outfit.
And that's that piece of awareness, knowing that behind every action is a value. We're trying to chase a feeling or a value, and it's often quite subconsciously held. So we're not even conscious that we're doing something. So that person who's putting money away and saving securely for the future is doing so in an unconscious attempt to meet their need for security. And they're not doing it to annoy their partner who's very freedom or rein their partner's, spending habits in at all. They're just doing it to meet that underlying core value, the intrinsic need in them, that is, I need this to feel secure. And vice versa, the other person who's maybe overspending in the other person's eyes, they're not doing it to be spontaneous or frivolous, but they've got a desire, a value set that requires freedom. And quite often, once we even just acknowledge these and recognize that, yes, my values are important, but not any less important than my partner's, because when we're in a partnership, it's equal importance. So no one should have to compromise their values. So we have to actually recognize, how do we create a system that works together? How do we both get on the same page that actually works together to say, when we manage our money as a team, we are meeting your requirement for security and my requirement for freedom, because they are both equally important.
Yes. And it's the metaphor that comes to mind is it's as if there's two people stuck on an island and they have a crate full of food that has to last them a week. And one person likes eating one type of food, one likes eating another type of food, and they need to compromise and work out how this food is going to last as long as possible together, or what's the best use they can get of this food while catering to both people's needs. Absolutely. One person might hate vegetables, one person probably doesn't like bread, and it's about making it work and sharing the resources in a way so that they can still each be comfortable, and survive. But secondly, they both get to the ideal outcome that they want to get to, which is lasting on the island for as long as possible and to not die of starvation.
Yeah, exactly. And beautiful analogy, because ultimately we can view money in exactly the same way. We have a joint resource that we've got a pool of resources together called money, that if we sit down and get on the same page and work out what are our joint priorities as well as our individual priorities, and how do we allocate this resource between us to make it meet each of these priorities, to make sure that all of our values and needs are met as a team, rather than trying to do it as individuals and wondering why we're not getting anywhere, or wondering why we're having conflict and arguing because we're just not on the same page.
And as far as, even the whole freedom and security side of things, it sort of reminds me of, have you heard of love languages before?
Yes.
So it sort of reminds me of that, how different people have different, they value different things from relationships. One person, it could be touch. One person, it could be buying something. And I feel like it just sounds very, very familiar to that. It's different, but it sounds very familiar.
It is essentially, because that's also based on values as well. What do you value? I value physical touch, or I value words of affirmation, or I value gifts. The same way, money is a resource that can channel or bring into our lives more of what we value. So it is very similar. There's a very similar crossover there. And that's why I think it's beautiful to always take a different lens or a viewpoint to how we look at how we manage money, because it's not just numbers on a page. It's not just, a spreadsheet and some numbers and some zeros. It's actually it's a resource, and it's a source of energy, a tool that we can use to bring in more of the things we value in life, more of our life force energy in a sense. So if we start to expand the view of how do we manage this resource as a collective rather than as two individuals. I think that's one of the first keys of really improving your relationship together as a couple around money.
Thanks for joining us on Sharing More Than the Sheets. Please make sure you subscribe to be updated with future episode releases, and feel free to share this episode with any friends or family that you think it might benefit. Please visit us at sharingmorethanthesheets.com.au to submit questions or requests for future podcast topics. These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au.